Well, it's that time again, ready to go racing in race of the season for the fourth iteration that we've done this. And every time we've delivered something different and something special and something unique to end our competition system season. To take you through the broadcast today, of course, myself, Lewis McGlade, John Munro is alongside. And we're talking touring cars today, which, at least for me and John, we are all about that. Going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. The touring cars on rFactor 2 are fantastic. Let's just say that first. So the racing tonight is going to be frenetic. It's going to be exciting. A nice little break as well. We've had a couple of faster cars recently with the LMP3s, and then we had the Indy car around Laguna Seca. So tonight is going to be very different indeed. But as we all know, touring car racing is some of the best racing you can get. Lots of door banging, lots of side-to-side action, probably a few incidents coming up as well. But Lewis, as always, I'm very excited.
Well, let's talk about what race of the season actually is and how drivers have got into this. Because, of course, they've gone through the competition system. They've gone through qualifiers to get them into the race. It's kind of one of the things that we like about things like race of the season, as well as just using the competition system, is it's not an elite group that have paid an entry fee or gone through the ranks to get in. It's anyone. Anyone who wants to come and race can come and race, and that's the beautiful thing about something like this.
Exactly, yeah, this is not gated off. All you need is rFactor 2 and, of course, the content being used in that particular season, which is this week, the touring cars and Donington Park, and you can take part. And if you're competitive, if you're a quick sim racer that's looking to get yourself into a broadcast like this, race against some of the top talent that there is on rFactor 2, it's a great place to do it. All you need to do is set a good qualifying time, as you say, and away you go. And I'm sure we're going to see plenty of those drivers in the field tonight.
Well, about 3 months ago, we released the Toyota Corolla onto the system. Again, a great addition to the service, and this is what the car is all about. Yeah, obviously dropped in the Q2 content drop, along with the Infinity, as well as 3 racetracks, one of them being Laguna Seca. Well, we raced that in the previous race of the season. We also had Brands Hatch, and where we're racing today at Donington Park. I mean, for a touring car fan, I am loving having these highly detailed British touring cars joining the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And the feedback so far has been very positive by people that have tried them. I've obviously driven them a lot myself. Very tricky to get up to temperature in terms of getting the tyres going, getting the brakes going, especially in the front-wheel drive Toyota. You will see a lot of people in the first few laps getting a lot of oversteer under braking. The back end's going to be very lively. But once the car gets into its rhythm and drivers get settled down, this car is amazing to drive. Obviously, the Infinity rear-wheel drive, the Toyota tonight that you're going to be seeing is front-wheel drive. Tyre wear is also going to be a big issue, Lewis. You know, we have multiple compounds that we can use, but these things are not very friendly on their tyres. They do have a lot of power, and any high-powered front-wheel drive racing machine is always going to burn through the rubber quite quickly, so we could definitely see that coming into play later on as well.
Oh, for sure. I think we're going to see our fair share of strategy. But you saw in that trailer that there was talk of how the car's been optimized for the new sound engine that we've had for rFactor 2 over the last few months, which have really increased the fidelity of the sound and kind of really made it more immersive. But there are more changes on the horizon. Let's see what quality of life improvements we're getting soon. Changes galore, and one of those being very, very important indeed, the introduction of Real Road 2.0. Can't wait for that, just to see how things change, how they've improved the weather recently on rFactor 2 anyway, some of the changes they've made to kind of make that a bit more realistic and stuff when we're having this new Real Road system coming in. Well, it's going to be a bit of a game changer, you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rFactor 2 has been around for a fair while now, but lots of other sims in a similar vein. You know, iRacing are obviously going to be looking at their rain system soon enough. ACC's got a rain system. Gran Turismo 7 this year brought out a fantastic new rain system, so it's great to see that Studio 397 are kind of following suit and making some changes, trying to make improvements. It's always been a really good and realistic sim, but this will just take it that one step further. rFactor 2, you have to say, it's been amazing the number of updates we've been having recently. More content on the way, of course, as well. We've seen so much new content this year, but importantly, so many quality of life improvements as well, as you've just seen. So yeah, it's an exciting time for the sim. It really is.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know about you, John, but I've been on rFactor 2 since it came out back in 2013, and it is a very, very different beast to what it was back then. It's gone through negatives, it's gone through positives right now with the additions that are being brought to the platform, not just in the form of just throwing content at it, which again, that list that's ever growing is fantastic, but it's how the back end of it is being improved bit by bit. And then we have competitions. Of course, we've just wrapped up the rFactor 2 Formula Pro series. We've over the last couple of years we've had GT Pro and GT Challenge. We've also got the Le Mans Virtual Series. There's so many reasons that you should probably jump onto rFactor 2 now, really.
Yeah, absolutely. For pretty much all levels as well, because you've got, as you say, those high-end competitions for the top teams, the top drivers to really prove their worth. But the competition system really does open it up to anybody as well. So it is a great time to be a fan of rFactor 2. I, like you, have been playing this game since the very beginning, and it took me a while to really get into it. It wasn't my favorite sim at first, I've got to be honest, but it's definitely the last maybe 3 or 4 years has been really catching my attention, and I've done lots of sim racing on it since. So yeah, great time for rFactor 2 fans, and great to see so many big improvements. The sim racing industry in general, Lewis, with so many great sims out there, it's in such a good place right now.
Yeah, more people in the sim racing world than ever, and more choice than ever as to what you can race. What we're going to focus on, though, now is what we're doing today. So you said before, touring cars. We've spoken of tyre wear because it's a 45-minute race. It's going to be something which really plays into these cars, the tyres, etc. They're built for races that are around 20 minutes long, not 45. So that's going to be a bit tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, it's not often that you see touring cars going this long unless you're looking at club level endurance series and stuff like that. So it's going to be a very different challenge for the drivers. Normally it's very short and sharp and quick and lots of overtaking, lots of action early on. But they're going to have to manage their cars here. They're also going to have to watch out for track limits as well, Lewis, because it's fairly strict around Donington. Lots of places where you can get cuts. So the drivers are going to have to be very careful of that. And as you say, with the tyres only lasting normally 15 or 20 minutes, and they are very worn by the end of it, normally, it has to be said, we could also see maybe some pit stops midway through, maybe some drivers trying something a bit different. As I said, 3 different compounds as well. You've got soft, medium and hard tyres. All have different speed capabilities, all of course last different lengths of time as well. So lots for the drivers to choose, and lots of variables in terms of strategy.
Yeah, for anyone who joined us through Formula Pro and through the relegation, and obviously touring cars are very, very different than a V10 powered 800 brake horsepower open wheeler, but still, in that we had 3 compounds of tyres. You had the soft and mediums, which were the ideal ones, and the hards, very much the third tyre. No one really used them all season. If they did, it was a horrific mistake, and I kind of get the feeling that might well be the case in this. Less so than kind of in that, but the hard tyre, you won't see too many people at the front using it because it is a little bit sluggish, I think might be the better word.
It's going to be the forgotten tyre, isn't it? I mean, I've been racing recently in an esports league using touring cars on rFactor 2, and I don't like the hard tyre. Let's put it that way. No. Sometimes folk are forced to use it, and I have an experience of that. It was not very nice.
Oh, I remember.
Oh, yeah. And we will also see, of course, in today's event, there will be some touring car specialists in the field as well. We'll see some of the drivers that I've been racing against in that series in the field today. So that's going to be interesting. Some new names maybe at the top of the podium for race of the season, and of course some returning names as always, but that is going to be interesting to keep an eye on as well. Let's just see if anyone picks the hard tyre. Maybe they want to last longer in the race, maybe try a no stopper, who knows.
Yeah, who knows indeed. We've had 3 of these before, of course. We went racing around the Daytona International Raceway in the BMW M4 GT3 Turger Hakkinen taking victory that day. We then went to the Nürburgring Nordschleife and in the LMP3, a very difficult race. Thomas Vack coming out in a very dominant fashion there. Last time we did was at Laguna Seca in the IndyCar, where Danilf Brandholm took victory. Who is going to be joining the ranks today? Well, Ross Mcgregor has already qualifying is already sorted, by the way. The qualifying order, they will be starting in the order they pre-qualified the way into this, and Ross Mcgregor was the fastest of which to come through, so he'll be starting this race from pole position alongside someone who is well known in the touring car scene, that of Chris Butcher. Going to be a tricky front row, but you never know what the fisticuffs are going to be like, whether it's going to be handbags at dawn on the race down towards Redgate.
It definitely could be. I mean, this front row alone with Ross Mcgregor and Chris Butcher, we obviously both know them well. They've raced in touring car series in the past and lots of other disciplines. But this will be the first time they've appeared in race of the season in the top split as well. So that'll be great to see. So as I said, expecting some new names at the front. There are, of course, other quick drivers in the field as well. One of them you're looking at there, Oliver Buns in the top 10 as well, starting P7 as the Corollas leave the grid for the formation lap. So yeah, it's a long race. The drivers are going to have to be patient though on lap 1. You have to be very careful not to overdo it, not to either burn up the rubber or make a mistake, pick up damage, stuff like that. It's going to be a tricky one.
Yeah, it's the kind of one of the things where the more experience you have in this car, the better when it comes to being able to deal with these tyres. For me, realistically, it's always been these kind of cars where you have the absolute slowest formation lap that I think it is possible to have. You want to be crawling around. You want to line up on the grid with 100% left on those tyres. Any less than that, and you know you're going to be having problems as the race goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's all about getting heat into the tires and making them, bringing them up to temperature. And as you say, in these cars, it's the complete opposite. As you can see there, you've got Ross Mcgregor on pole, Butcher behind him, obviously in the same liveries here, so we're going to have to keep an eye on the numbers. But yeah, they're just taking it nice and easy. I say Butcher, of course, it's Rory Butcher's car. That's why it's got Butcher on the window. I was instantly thinking of Chris Butcher there. But it's actually, Ross McGregor's very local to the Knockhill circuit, so he knows Rory Butcher well and sees him driving his touring car around there a lot. So I'm sure that's going to get a little bit confusing, but we'll do our best to keep you in the loop with what's what. And as you can see, the driver's going left on the back straight, Lewis, which means they are, of course, racing the GP layout. And for me, it's maybe not as fun a track to hot lap, but it's definitely going to increase overtaking opportunities.
Yeah, once you come through the S's, coming down into the into the hairpin, of course, into the Melbourne hairpin on the Melbourne loop that we're presently on up towards Goddard's. Great overtaking opportunity. That race up towards the final corner, it rises uphill and then comes back down again. It's incredibly tricky to keep the front left from locking up. Of course, no ABS, no TC on these cars. You've got to do everything with your left and right foot and be balanced yourselves.
Absolutely. So we're going to see the drivers now pull up on the grid. It's going to be a standing start as well, Lewis. Who's your money on for this one? I mean, for me, I've got to say Ross on pole position, looking strong, but we know how good Chris Butcher is over a race distance. It's very tough to call.
I've raced Chris enough in touring cars to know that in a day like this, as we've got a bit of issue there for about 9th position, someone very out of position. But I know what Chris is like when it comes to looking after his tyres. He is very, very good. This is going to be a crash if they're not careful. Very, very good on his tyres. And I think he'll know his strategy. He'll have it down. And there's only one way to find out as we'll get ready for 45 minutes onto the clock. We'll have to wait for everyone to get into their positions, which they'll be slightly delayed in doing so as we get ready for 45 minutes race of the season 4 here at Donington Park. It's Ross Mcgregor, it's Chris Butcher on the front row of the grid, and a sea of cars ready to beat them as the Toyota Corollas are underway here at Donington. A good start in the background, a terrible start from 3rd position. It's a great one though for our race leader in Ross Mcgregor, who will lead us up towards Redgate for the first time. Chris Butcher not able to get around the outside. It'll be a hold as they race their way through Redgate, and it is Ross Mcgregor leading a top 2 that have pulled away from the pack behind.
Absolutely, yeah, great start from both of the front row sitters, and it seemed to, basically 3rd and 4th seemed to bog down a little bit. Not a great start. Maybe it was reaction time, maybe it was wheel spin, but now will we see Ross and Chris work together to try and pull a gap, because we know how quick those two are. We're expecting, them to be the pace setters today. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep that gap building, as we now see Jonathan Fraser, of course, a former podium sitter in race of the season, and we have a yellow flag in sector 2 as well, so someone has come a cropper in the old hairpin.
Yeah, like I said, it was Jonathan Fraser who came up a couple of positions short of taking the victory in the LMP3s. We went racing in the Nordschleifer and race of the season 2. No one, of course, over the 3 races that we've had, no one has been on the podium more than once. But we will correct ourselves, by the way. It wasn't Chris Butcher. It was Yusuke Harada who qualified in 3rd, who's obviously been moved up. I don't think Chris Butcher is here then for that race. Harada then will start from 2nd position and will try and hang on to the rear end of Ross Mcgregor. Not able to do so, though. It's Mr. Adorkle, though, who's worked his way up onto the podium from 13th in the qualifiers.
Yeah, that's an incredible start to his race. As we see, a bit of a lock up there for 6th place Oliver Bunce going into the hairpin, but keeps it all together. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, no Chris Butcher. We expected to see him. Unfortunately, we're not seeing him, and that maybe leaves an opportunity for Ross to try and break away here. Let's see, though, if Harada can stick onto his tail as they get to the end of lap 1. Oh, and a spinner in the background, Lewis. Contact.
That would be Mr. Adorkable. I think had the great start. When we saw it was kind of angled to go very, very aggressively on the race start. As we look at Paparanopoulos, he's in 7th position. A bit of side-by-side directly ahead as Buns and Adorkable go side-by-side, going through the first corner at Redgate and then heading back down the hill through the S's. We look at Jonathan Fraser now, who's gone up from 5th into 4th. Buns directly behind. Adorkable on a one-way trip backwards and cannot keep in touch with the trio ahead.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see that early on, Lewis. We talked earlier, these cars are very tricky to keep under control in the first few laps. The tyres are coming up to temperature. They're very, very front heavy. So if you push the brakes too hard, and it's very easy to do, the back will swing round on you. We've obviously seen that a couple of times already. So we see another yellow flag in Sector 2. But yeah, everyone seems to be calming down at the moment, though. It's looking okay.
Yes, indeed. Now, I don't know how good you are at spotting the tyres, as we've got a bit of an issue. Kashif out into the barrier. I'm going to assume that's down. Well, actually, where would that be? It feels like it would be up at Coppice, but I'm not necessarily sure. Oh, no, sorry,
I think
McLean's.
it was Sector 2. Yeah, I think it was Sector 2. So probably McLean's, as we see someone going off there.
Yeah, I think that might be Humanich, who's just got a little bit wide directly ahead, and Paparanopoulos has to worry, has to try and attack. It's Buns he's running side by side with. You can see Fraser's got up into the podium, a little bit of contact here as they race their way through. Humanich having a little bit of contact from Paparanopoulos directly behind. Buns picks up 5th position as they race down towards Goddard's once again, and Fraser is starting to run away from this group because they're battling a little bit too hard. Big send down the inside. You see that from Buns. He grabs 4th position with an absolute stonker of a send.
Yeah, in true British touring car style there from Oliver Buns, making his way up to 4th. He's going to try and chase down Jonathan Fraser. The lead two have absolutely bolted at the front there, Mcgregor and Harada, but Fraser doing a good job to work his way up to 3rd. Obviously, Humanich doing a great job in the first lap as well, Lewis, because he didn't qualify too high, actually. He was starting fairly low down the grid, so it was a great effort to get up to 3rd. Obviously, took advantage of some of the worst starts we saw back there, but we're now looking at Paparopoulos going into the old hairpin. Can he make a move?
Oh, a little bit of contact, trying to do the up and under, not making that one stick. Obviously, we don't really know what tyre compounds these are all running on. They could be running on softer compounds, they could be running mediums and trying to extend it and get a bit further. I don't know about you, John. I don't think anyone's looking at tyres at the moment.
Yeah, there we are. You can see the compound. So you've seen some drivers, including Paparanopoulos, who's making the move now, he's actually gone for a split compound. So just to explain that, it means he's going to be running different tyre compounds in the front and rear of the car. You can do that with rFactor 2 as there's contact for 6th. They're getting very argy-bargy very early on here. But yeah, that means that they'll be running mediums on the front, presumably, and softs on the rear. Now, the soft tyres don't tend to wear as quickly as the front tyres, as we see a bit more contact as the chicane. There's too much action, Lewis. It's hard for me to actually explain anything about the tyres. But yeah, you could see split compounds because the front tyres need to go a little bit longer in this race than the rears, although we might see drivers changing just 2 tyres in the pit stops. If they make pit stops, it's all up in the air. So interesting to see all the different strategies going on.
I get the feeling, from what I've driven in this thus far, that we would expect pit stops. There was a little bit of a lock up there on the front left. Said it on the formation lap. Trying to get the car stopped for Goddard's is pretty tricky. You do tend to lock up the front left. That's what we've seen there. Starco's been just pushed off on the exit. Mr. Adorkable comes straight back through with a little bit of contact, bit of weaving in the background from Alex. And Van Uijk, who's got the hard tyres on, he's struggling to kind of keep up. Was up in about 6th position not too long ago and is dropping backwards in that white, blue and red car that's to the inside of the black and yellow one going through Redgate. Oh,
yeah, that's going to get very dicey as they head down the hill, but it seems like they're all holding it together. We're now heading through the left-hander. This is a spectacular section of circuit, as we all know, through the Craner curves. But Stacko gets it stopped, gets it turned in for Old Hairpin. Lovely stuff, holds on to P9. Yeah, only a couple of drivers in the top 15 going for the hard front tyres. And both of them, are struggling to make progress at the moment, more dropping back rather than going forward. The hard tyres should come into it a little bit later on, though, as the softs wear off quicker. They're going to have a little bit more tyre left. But will they ever have the ultimate grip of the softs, even if the softs are worn? I'm not sure. We're going to have to wait and see.
I've got to say, one of the main reasons why I always struggled is a little bit too deep there from Van Uyck, who's now going to open the door for Starker to come through. Got alongside on the run down the Starkey straight up towards the Fogarty S's. Starko's on the outside, going to have to send it all the way around. If Uyck is not going to try and hang on, but there's a bit of a lock up there from Starker coming through. But for me, with the hard tyres, the reason why I struggled on them so much is because they're a less grippy compound. They tend to scrub a lot more over the race surface, which actually in turn sometimes means they wear even faster. They can tend to overheat even more, as that going straight on will be Cook, not anywhere near the apex.
Nowhere near at all, but gets it all gathered up and continues on without a problem. Yeah, exactly that, Lewis. You know, just because the tyre's harder and will theoretically last longer, you're going to have to work it that bit harder. And if you're understeering, if you're locking up, if you're struggling, as you say, it scrubs more and it could end up costing you the same amount of performance. We see a fantastic run though off the hairpin from Alex, who's going to head down the inside, and that is going to be position 8 on the brakes. Can I get it stopped? Well done, very nicely done. Makes the apex still. Lovely room left there by Sebastian Stacco, who's going to come back for the up and under on the exit. They're going to go side by side through Craner curves once again, giving each other the perfect amount of space. They're still side by side, and then that's not the perfect amount of space, that is contact. And contact again into Old Hairpin. The lockup comes from Alex, who goes off onto the gravel, and that's it for Patrick Alex. He's going to lose all that time, and it was going so well for the first few corners, but then they just started bumping into each other and all went wrong fairly quickly.
Yeah, like I say, when you're coming downhill, here's John Cook going on the attack and not finding his way past Van Uyck. But with that battle coming down, once you're going into the Old Hairpin, of course, as you get the car over to the left-hand side, you then start steering to the right. It moves all of the way over to the left-hand side. It only takes a slight tap to unload that front right tyre. It's exactly what happened to Alex there, and like I say, down to 12th position now. So here comes John Cook looking to the inside. That one's not going to work, not really alongside enough. They've got to worry though about track limits. We've seen quite a few be pretty casual with it running through the Fogarty S. Well, you can't get away with that for too much longer. If they're going to keep doing that, well, we're going to see quite a few penalties being dished out here this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the harshest track limits there is on the rFactor 2 platform, and that's going to be a big part of today. You know, a drive-through penalty is not going to be a short experience. Probably about 20 seconds the driver's going to lose for a drive-through, and they only have 3 cuts. So I can guarantee you we will see some drive-through penalties in this race. I can absolutely guarantee it. The question is who, the question is when, and will the drivers learn? As Patrick Alex coming across the inside of the hairpin there, was he? Yeah,
when we jump back on board there, I thought coming from Narnia pretty much, absolutely out of nowhere. The thing is, the most important thing after you've had an off in a car like this, when we're talking about tyres like this, is to back off, is to drive within yourself, is to not get flustered, which is easier said than done. I mean, these are touring car drivers after all, so the flustering is kind of part and parcel of the racing. You get flustered a fair amount around here, but you've got to find a way of bringing yourself back into it. If you've overheated your tyres, that's okay. Drive calm for the next couple of laps, except that you'll be half a second to a second lap slower for the next couple of laps whilst you bring the tyres back down into their operating window.
Yeah, you can't just magic the temperature away. You cannot just get the grip back by driving harder. As we see Cook going to the outside, managed to keep it on the curb, so almost made it work, but it's going to have to pull back in. But yeah, no, as you say, absolutely imperative. And also with these cars, Lewis, with the amount of horsepower they've got, being front-wheel drive, and of course no traction control, if you just nail the throttle out of the corners, you're really going to spin up the fronts for no reason. You're not going to gain any speed from that. You're just going to get essentially wheel spin, and you're going to lose traction. You're going to also burn up your tyres. So the experienced touring car drivers will be very, very cautious in modulating the throttle on corner exits. It won't make them any slower. It'll actually make them quicker, and they will save their tyres that bit more, keep them nice and cool, and we're definitely going to see that today. Ross Mcgregor, by the way, 6.8 second lead now he's got over Harada. It's looking very good for the Scot.
Yeah, very impressive right now. Yoshiki Harada, who's trying to close down, not able to do so, and you kind of get the feeling that that gap's been growing more and more as each minute passes, not just in the sense of it's going up a second or whatever it is a lap, but it's going up more, the actual percentage is going up more and more each lap. It says that Ross McGregor might be looking after his tyres quite a lot. He's got a fair amount of experience in racing on the touring cars on rFactor 2, so he should be well versed dealing with it. What we are going to get though is a 3-way fight for 3rd place, because Fraser's coming under attack from Paparanopoulos and from Buns as well. So Paparanopoulos has made a really good charge at the start of this race. He's starting to knock at the door for the podium, and Jonathan Fraser, who himself has made up a few spots, can't knock that. Was qualified in 11th and has worked his way up into 3rd, whilst we see that Cook almost into the rear end of Van Uyck as we race around at McLean's and up towards Coppice, which is where he tried going around the outside a couple of laps ago. A couple of issues from Starko as well, who's dropping back into this. That one's not going to work from Cook, because of course that Toyota Corolla is going to pop straight back in on the inside. It's such a difficult corner to go around the outside of is Coppice.
It is. It was a mirror image of the last lap as well from John Cook. He's obviously very confident in the brakes into that corner, but it's not easy, Lewis. You know, to carry the speed, you really do need to get it slowed down and drag your car over for the apex. It's a blind apex as well, so it's a tricky corner to get right. I wasn't quite sure what happened on the run up the hill there, because Van Uyck, he slowed down almost when Stacko ran wide at Old Hairpin. And then almost just opened up the door for John Cook. As we see, Papadopoulos. Now, this is early for a tyre change, Lewis, which makes me think it could be a drive-through, so we'll just keep one eye on that. I wouldn't be that surprised if we were already seeing drivers getting a drive-through, because it's very easy, as we've discussed, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll see what happens as he comes out the pits. But,
you'll see if he gets stationary in the timing tower there. If that's 0-0, so he has come in for a stop. You can see as that timer, the second timer is counting up there, it is actually for a stop very, very early. So clearly wearing the tyres quite hard.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see that with 33 minutes still to go. It's a long way to go in whatever set you change onto. Obviously, we might see some drivers attempting a no-stop, but it's going to be very tricky based on at least my experience with these cars, and I'm sure your own as well. 45 minutes is a long way to go, so 33 minutes is a long way to go in itself. It's going to be interesting to see if he has to come in again later on in the race, but let's hope not, as we now ride on board with 12th place, now following Robert Kaluza up in 11th.
Yeah, Kozlowski's trying to get up to the rear end. Was actually quite a lot closer a lap or two ago. The two of those closing in on those ahead. There has been a bit of an issue though for Cook, I believe, who, there you go, you see him in the background. You can't mistake that purple card. There has been a severe issue for John Cook, who was running up in 9th position. No more, dropping outside of the top 14, dropping right the way down towards the back of the order after a fairly large moment, at least it seemed in the background. I don't quite know how that's got over to that side, but he's gone off again and he's out, he's done.
He is done, and it goes from bad to worse for him. He was looking quite racy there early on, so it's a real shame to see John Cook DNF. You can see there on your tower on the left. Not sure what happened. Maybe we'll see if we can get a replay, but there he is in the garage. We've also seen Justin Melillo in the pits as well. Now, Justin didn't make it past lap 1 last time out on his race of the season debut at Laguna Seca. It's good to see him back for the touring cars, but he's made a very early stop, Lewis, and he was stationary for quite a while as well. Now it's showing him as still being in the pit lane, so I think something's gone wrong somewhere there for Justin Melillo.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but you wouldn't be in the pit lane for 50 seconds unless you're being serviced, but it's not showing a service as being done. You can see that there is no car in the pit lanes. I think there's been a couple more issues for Melillo, who might be out of this race. Also says that it's back out onto the racetrack, so again, fingers crossed on that one as we look backwards from Kaluza towards Kozlowski, who's in that 11th position, the final position inside the top 10 at the moment, whilst Mcgregor, oh, never mind. Oh, who was that who ran wide? It was ahead of, because I think that might be going a lap down.
Yeah, I wonder if that was maybe Melillo coming out of the pits. I don't want to speculate, it's hard to tell, but it did look like a back marker. It looked like they were trying to get out the way and just touch the gravel, and it's very easy for these cars to rotate, but we'll keep an eye on that one. And it's, Humanich is off as well, running wide, but seems to be continuing on, 4 seconds behind P5 at the moment. So a bit of a moment there, but it doesn't look like there's been any damage or any harm. So yeah, drivers finding it tough out there, and I bet you, Lewis, that is the overheating tyres and wearing tyres beginning to cause a lot of understeer for these guys.
Like I say, it's going to be one of those things that's going to cause more problems as the race goes on. Looking backwards from Kaluza, you don't really think about it when it comes to touring cars. Everyone seems to look at British touring cars and think, well, I mean, you could just hammer it around the entirety of the race. It's not true. You do, like, even in a 20-minute race, you have to think about how you're driving the tyres. You see this also in the actual British touring cars. Anyone who's saying this is just a sim thing, that's not the case. You do see it in actual British touring cars. If you actually go and look at the times that they're setting towards the end of the race, tyre wear is a major factor in it. That's how it is. You can't just go fully out on attack. That's what makes the difference between the soft tyres and the mediums. Obviously, on a standard British touring car race weekend, you're talking the option tyre as to which one you pick for one race. There are certain advantages and disadvantages from taking it. It's not just gold all the way home by picking the better tyre. That's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we see it with touring car racing as well. Normally, there's the front and rear wheel drive aspect as well. So the rear wheel drive cars tend to get off the line better, but then the tires take a bit longer to come up to temperature. So the front wheel drives are quicker. And then towards the end of the race, the tire wear tends to favor the rear wheel drives as well. So you do see that kind of back and forth. Obviously, today it's a bit different because everyone is in the Corolla. And the Corolla won't be the only front wheel drive British touring car on rFactor 2 in a very short amount of time, because we have, of course, had the Hyundai announced as well, which will be great to see added to the British touring car roster. We're going to get more and more of these, and that's fantastic news.
Which, in my opinion, looks fantastic. Always kind of liked, but now we get to do our own liveries and stuff in it, which I am, again, all about as we ride on board with Joe Young on the rear end. The next one to try and pass Van Nieuwijk, but then there is also the train appearing behind. Kaluza and Kozlowski also jumping into this. Joe Young looking to the inside, committing into what is not really a particularly heavy braking zone at the Foggy S, but that might have just got Van Nieuwijk offline. Joe Young with the up and under, coming down towards the Melbourne hairpin, almost alongside. Van Nieuwijk covers it off, receives a bit of a tap from behind. Where is that other Toyota Corolla as they're trying to turn their way through the corner? Completely backwards. Van Nieuwijk's been sent off. Joe Young has been sent off the road also as Kaluza comes through and up into 8th.
Yeah, great for Kaluza, disaster for Van Nieuwijk, and yeah, it was a tricky one. Joe seemed very keen to make the move done. He was looking into the chicane, which I took a big deep breath because I did not think that was going to work, but actually I think it kind of did, because it unsettled Van Nieuwijk as well going in there. So I thought, you know what, he's played a blinder there. He's kind of set him off his line, and now he'll be able to make the move into the hairpin. But there was just too many late direction changes there. Contact on the rear was inevitable. We saw it coming a mile off, and unfortunately Van Nieuwijk was sent flying. So hopefully he'll be able to continue on and pick up where he left off. Also, just to confirm, Justin Melillo has retired from the race, as has Paparinopoulos, which is a real shame because he was doing very well early on in this one.
Yeah, big shame for Paparinopoulos to be out. Was obviously challenging for the podium before a much earlier pit stop than was expected. Maybe tyre wear was too high, and thought actually maybe not. Won't be able to reach the end of the race. So a bit of a shame there, as we have 3 retirements already. But it doesn't mean the podium battle is done, because Buns is closing in on Jonathan Fraser, who's looking for a second podium, to be the first driver to take 2 podiums in an rFactor 2 race of the season. Now on board with Robert Kaluza. Kozlowski's still kind of there, only about half a second off. It's the same gap that you can see forwards, looking backwards as well. So this might need to be a bit of a send to the inside if he's going to get past Young.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing lots of kind of close battles in the midfield at the moment as Patrick Alex leaves the pits after his stop. But yeah, lots of gaps that are just around about a second, half a second further down the field. You see Kaluza defending, or actually making the move, sorry, I should say, on Joe Young up in P8.
Yeah, good move. Like you say, you had to send it.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to do that in this touring car, and obviously now with the temperature in the tyres, you can actually make it work. Is he pulling into the pits? He is pulling into the pits. So 26 minutes to go, a slightly more realistic point to be making a pit stop. We are expecting many of the drivers who are making the stop to come in probably about midway through, which would make sense. As Patrick Alex, who's just come out the pit lane, that is a big impact into the tyre barrier. He will continue that car, but it's going to be heavily damaged, Lewis. That's such an easy one to do as well. The back end getting unsettled through Craner curves, maybe got on the grass under braking for Old Hairpin, we're not quite sure, but the aftermath was definitely not pretty.
Well, here comes Oliver Barnes. There's Patrick Alex without a rear wing, and there'll be substantial rear damage on that car also. Oliver Barnes now up into 3rd position, though, making the move on Jonathan Fraser coming up towards Coppice. And I remember it was a couple of our good friends, being Eric Strana and Robert Wiesemuller, when we were racing back in the days of 2013, 2014, 2015. And I remember Rob Wiesemuller trying to give Eric Strana some advice, saying sometimes you're trying to make the move a little bit too pretty. I.e., Eric Strana was always trying to go around the outside, was always trying to make like this standout move into a bold corner. And basically Rob Wiesemuller was like, sometimes just dive down the inside. Just go for it. Just brake later and get the move done. Completely right. It's what we kind of saw there a little bit with that move from Kaluza. Just sent it down the inside to make the apex, to make the corner, to make the position.
Absolutely. Harada, by the way, into the pits, P2, leaving Mcgregor with a massive lead out front, but still to pit. But yeah, you're right, absolutely. I mean, in racing, it's so easy to overcomplicate things at times. And, you know, people talk about dive bombs and bad moves. Of course, you see people that go for ambitious moves that we're never on. But at the end of the day, the most common overtaking move is just send it down the inside, brake a bit later. As long as you can get it stopped in time and not hit anyone and make it nice and clean, that's the best way to overtake, and it's completely right to do so. So, well done. And that's the move done for... actually, you say that, I'm looking for him in order. Where's he gone? Oh no, Kozlowski. Of course, he pulled into the pits, didn't he? After he made that move on Young. So Kaluza. So he's back in 14th now. It's a bit of a shame when you make a good move and then immediately have to pull into the pits, isn't it?
Yeah, like I say, I think it's maybe he didn't no, well, no, you've got to. So the way it works in rFactor 2 is you've got to request your pit stop. Essentially, it would be, as in the real life, as telling your pit crew that you're about to come into the pit lane, be ready for me. And there's a certain period of time where it's required until it's ready. Essentially for you to come in, so you got to request it. So he would have known he was coming in before he sent it down the inside, as we see the car into the pit lane after being into the barrier at this corner a little bit earlier on in the race, coming up towards McLean's. Kozlowski lost a bit of time at T1 as well, whilst trying to catch up to the rear end of Young, but I think that between the two at the moment, it did seem as though Artur Kozlowski was a little bit faster than Joe Young, at least over the last few laps.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can close that gap in. 1.1 at the moment through the chicane, nice and tidy from Kozlowski. You can just see them struggling a little bit at the tyres as well. You can see them just taking a few less liberties. Obviously track limits as well, Lewis. Got to be very, very careful. We still haven't seen any knowing drive-throughs, as we see Buns and Fraser from P3 and 4 both pulling into the pit lane. So that's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye out for. See if Buns does come out the pits ahead of Fraser. There's Fraser in the green car. Easy to tell which one it is. Ahead of Buns in the background there in the kind of classic Toyota GR livery. And Humanich is in again. I think that's not the first time he's been in the pits, is it? Oh, he was off earlier, so it might well be. Yeah, it was a mistake he made, wasn't it? It is indeed. So yeah, many drivers coming into the pits now. One man who still hasn't pitted is race leader Ross Mcgregor, and what a job he's doing, Lewis. He's got a 43-second lead at the moment. Harada has been in the pits, but that was, looking comfortable anyway for Ross, over 10 seconds. So he should be able to come in and get out still in the lead. Now, when we saw Ross Mcgregor on pole position, we both know him very well. The rest of the field's in trouble, because Ross has never really been a qualifier. For him, race pace, tyre wear, consistency is always good. If he's on his own, he can just set in the laps, and he's metronomic. It's phenomenal. And as soon as you see him on pole position, he's going to have great race pace as well. And that's what we've seen from him. He's just completely checked out at the front. And the metronome begins, and we'll see him in the pit soon, I'm sure, but it's looking very good for him at the moment.
Yeah, Lopez into the pit lane at the moment. Got to say, McGregor can't leave this too late, because he might actually lose the race lead if he's not careful, because Harada, as long as they pit and change the same amount of stuff, I don't know if Harada's changed 2 tyres or all 4, but you can kind of see that gap is coming down quite quickly. It's already down to 43 seconds. It's coming down around about a second a lap at the moment. Now, what he said, absolutely 10-second lead that McGregor had pre-pit stop, but you don't want to be timing it down to the milliseconds. You want to give yourself a bit of room. So if I'm McGregor, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, sure, I want to have a better second half of the race and not have to worry too much about tyres, but still I'd want to be coming into the pit lane the next lap or 2. I don't really want to push it any or much further.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to. I think, he's got that lead. He knows his rival's been in the pits. It's like, when you watch Formula 1, you see the driver behind going for the undercut. You cover them off if you've got the opportunity to. So we will probably see McGregor soon. The gap is coming down, though, you're right, and that'll simply be because of McGregor's tyre wear versus Harada on the brand new rubber. Now, we didn't see if Harada changed 2 tyres or 4, because we are expecting some drivers to maybe just change the front tyres. The rears tend to last well. As there we see now McGregor into the pits. Now, we'll see what his pit stop time is, because that should be able to tell us. Now, Harada, according to our graphic, did come back out on medium front and soft on the rear. So it'll be interesting to see what McGregor chooses. He was soft all round at the start. I think he'll be soft all round again. But if this pit stop is short, you can predict an 11.5 seconds. It is a short stop for race leader Ross Mcgregor. That tells me, Lewis, that he's changing front tyres only.
Yeah, just the 2. Of course, you don't really need to change rears, as here comes the move. Jonathan Fraser trying to get around the outside of Constant Van Uyck, and with a lovely move around the outside of the old hairpin. Of course, that is superior grip doing the talking. Some nice fresh tyres on Jonathan Fraser, who's still chasing down that second podium race of the season, and that's why he had to change them a little bit earlier. Big kick of oversteer, obviously not on power, more on the rear, just stepping out as Kaluza making a little bit of contact with Cavallazzi coming out of the old hairpin.
Yeah, absolutely. We cut to that at the perfect point. We were nudging the back of Cavallazzi, who didn't maybe get the best run through the corner. But yeah, not great nonetheless to be in the back of him. So Kaluza, we need to have a look at that one again, and the stewards will have to have a look at least. But yeah, unfortunately, that happens out of old hairpin. The car, is very unsettled. The weight's all over the place, and the nudge in the wrong position can fire you off into the wall, and that's what we've seen there. Lead gap, by the way, 10 seconds again, so you can probably guess that Harada went for a 2 tyre change as well. So those two seem to be fairly close together in strategy, but Ross now with the advantage, of course, having pitted later, his tyres are that bit fresher.
Yeah, And so now Mcgregor's setting some pretty decent lap times. We head into the final 20 minutes of this race. A couple of pit stops coming. Kozlowski into the pit lane. Colston Van Nieuwijk not coming in, so maybe trying to do this on a no stop, which would be genuinely very, very impressive. He does have to worry though, as Kozlowski comes out of the pit lane directly in front and doesn't have to worry about trying to make up that position. I mean, based on Jonathan Fraser's position, I wouldn't necessarily rule out Kozlowski is potentially even trying to challenge for a podium. That green car just down the road a little bit of Jonathan Fraser is on the rear end, I think, of a back marker that isn't Buns, but I'm not so sure that third, fourth or fifth in the race have made pit stops so far, as the back marker is getting out of the way.
Very out of the way, you have to be said. Probably more out of the way than need be, but all credit there. Yeah, absolutely. You know, looking at the gaps as well, I mean, the theoretical podium here, Buns was the man running in third position behind Terada and Mcgregor. So Mr. Adorkable, Stacko, still to pit by the looks of it, if they are even going to pit. But Fraser lost a huge amount of time to Buns in the pits, so I would suggest that he maybe took 4 tyres instead of 2, something like that, or unless there was a mistake that we didn't see from Fraser. But as you say, yeah, Kozlowski is not far at all behind Fraser, so he's right in the mix here for at least a top 5. Possibly, you know, top 4, top 3 if things go wrong for anyone in front, but that's going to be looking a bit tricky. Mr. Adorkable, by the way, pulls into the pits from 3rd place, so that will see the order shuffle a little bit.
Yes, indeed. Like I say, just getting some fresh tyres on. Maybe going forward would be classified as a standard touring car stint, with there being about 18.5 minutes left to go. By the way, I can see that Cameron McMillan is trying to start fights with me because he's asking what county. What he said, what postcode is this? It's a Derby postcode for Donington Park, but it is not in Derbyshire. I like that. This is a fact. It is in Leicestershire. You can see it on a county map. I'm going to get very angry about it, but it's definitely in Leicestershire.
It's almost in Derby itself. Being at East Midlands Airport, it's not far away at all. But
well,
yeah,
if you go straight on the start-finish straight, 200 metres into what is to the right of the camera, you're in Derbyshire right now. We're not.
We're not, yeah. And you may have noticed in the broadcast we've been seeing some planes flying overhead, and that is how close we are to East Midlands Airport, because having driven Donington, there's been so many times where you've been driving down the back straight and you've got a plane flying directly over your head and dropping aviation fuel on the road. And actually that makes a big difference in the wet, Lewis, as I've discovered many times. If the aviation fuel drops and then it mixes with the wet surface, Donington is one of the slippiest places to drive in wet conditions.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's kind of one of those things you've got to get used to the nuances of each circuit, and Donington has its fair few, shall we say. It's a great racetrack. They absolutely love Donington Park. I think it's one of the absolute best racetracks in the country. So much fun, so raceable, so entertaining, almost regardless of what car you throw around it. And the challenges of it know no bounds. Every corner is very, very different to the last, and that's why we kind of enjoy it. And it really does take a lot of commitment around here, especially at the old hairpin and up towards Coppers as well.
It does indeed, and a lot of bravery into the slow corners as well, getting the car turned out. It's a technical circuit as well, because we saw Van Nieuwijk there, an awesome onboard from within the cockpit. And he's obviously got the hard tyres in the front, though, still not stopped. So on very worn hards in the front, that car surely can't be handling too well. And you can see how much steering lock he's using around the last corner. That is a sign that his tyres are worn out, because you just need to dial on more and more lock to try and save the car, and of course that causes more scrubbing. And it's just a horrible cycle, really. So you can see him struggling with that. But I mean, he's doing a good job, is Van Nieuwijk, up in 7th position. He'll be happy enough with that. But he is going to come under pressure, as we see sideways through the corner.
Oh my.
No, he wasn't sideways. He was just turned so much that it looked like his arms were the other way around. Thank you for that.
That was the most extreme level. This is a red flag for me. Come into the pit lane, mate, get some fresh tyres on and actually get back into enjoying it, because right now, that, I can tell you, is not fun. It is so difficult. This, though, is the battle for third. Starko under attack. Buns trying to make the move down the inside, coming into the fog at ES, and Oliver Buns is moving up and is up onto the podium.
He is indeed, yeah. Regaining his position that he'd earned earlier before the pit stops, and he's got a comfortable lead now as well, so this is looking very, very good indeed for a trophy for Oliver Buns, sitting comfortably in P3. We're on board with Mr. Adorkable as well, who is behind the understeering Van Nieuwijk. Now in rFactor 2 you do have tyre wear indicators, and a number out of 100 is a percentage, and I can guarantee you that his tyres will be reading 0 right now. It definitely looks like it based on the steering angle used, and there's nothing he can do in defence against Mr. Adorkable, who heads up into 7th place with his fresh new tyres. He'll be looking racy for the rest of this one as well.
Starko comes into the pit lane in fourth position. I wonder if Van Nieuwk is also going to do the same thing after letting a couple through. I think Kaluza will be the next one to come through. You can kind of see pulling off. There might well be some serious issues on that car. There is Sebastian Starko, who is in the pit lane, so relinquishes another position back to Jonathan Fraser. Keep an eye on the gap between third and fourth. Dorkable with a very wide run. There's Van Nieuwk coming into the pit lane in the background and dragging another one in with him, but I don't think that was Kaluza, as Starko is on the pit lane exit and will be rejoining and closing in on this battle.
Yeah, it was definitely a back marker there that pulled into pits, but yeah, he just couldn't do it. I think he tried to do it on a no-stopper based on the tyre choice and the distance he's gone into this race, but just couldn't quite make it stick. And I guess that shows, you know, Lewis, sometimes you need to do big, long race runs to try and learn that kind of information about the tyres, but now he knows for future races. As Kozlowski got very sideways through Old Hairpin, that's going to leave the door open for Mr. Adorkable. He's going to cut across. That was very close indeed. And he does manage to pull in front of him, so very aggressive defence there from Kozlowski, but he manages to make it stick for now. Not for long. Through goes Mr. Adorkable. Obviously through went Fraser earlier, and that is changed of position, and dropping is Kozlowski, who still hasn't made a pit stop. And a lot of these guys as well, Lewis, are a lap down from Ross Mcgregor here.
Here's Henk Jan Smits into the pit lane, into the retirement books, unfortunately as well. It did say that Kozlowski hadn't been into the pit lane, but it did also say that Kaluza hadn't as well. But we know that Kaluza has been into the pit lane. But I believe that is correct on Kozlowski. I don't think he has been into the pit lane, but who knows on that one. All I know is that if I hadn't pitted right now, I'd be in a very concerning position. Also having to let through some back markers, having to let through some people that are coming through to lap them themselves, one of which being Ross Mcgregor, leading by 15 seconds, but basically lapping everyone up to fourth place at the moment. And I don't think Jonathan Fraser is that far down the road.
No, and this is a textbook showing from Ross Mcgregor. He's an experienced sim racer. He is a very high level sim racer here. We're talking about someone who could compete at the highest level, both on rFactor 2 and other platforms like ACC, Assetto Corsa, etc., etc. We've seen it from Ross in the past. He crosses over a lot of platforms as well, and he's just showing his quality here, managing to lap most of the field now up into P4. I think he'll get Jonathan Fraser fairly soon as well, and it's just been a fantastic performance from him. Really putting down a marker, and it looks like he's sailing towards his first ever race of the season win on his first ever race of the season appearance.
Yeah, he's not exactly the... sorry, he can't hear me now, it's fine. He's not the youngest driver in sim racing. He's not the most experienced, and certainly not the oldest, but he's not the freshest eyes. And with that, though, in a race like this, to be fair, that's what you need. You don't want to come into it brand new thinking that it's just going to race it like a touring car like you've raced on other platforms or anything else. This is not a typical touring car race at the best of times, with it being this much longer. I mean, like I said, in some places, the 12 minutes that you see there, that's the start and the finish of the race, is that entire 12 minutes. Well, we've gone 3 times longer than that. You know, we've had a 45-minute race, of which we've already ticked off 33 minutes. There's still plenty of time left into it. There will be still some screaming tyres as we look back. The battle for 8th place, Kaluza and Young. Whether Kaluza's been into the pit lane or not, I think he definitely has been, but it was a long time ago and might well need to come in again if this is the pace.
Oh, absolutely. We saw lots of drivers peeling in surprisingly early, and don't get me wrong, it's going to be tricky for them. These last 10 minutes is going to be very tricky indeed. Even if you've made a stop at this point, the understeer is going to be huge, and I think we might be seeing that now from Kaluza. As Young goes to the outside, he's already passed him as we head into the corner. They're going to go side by side through the apex. Kaluza's going to leave just enough room. Joe Young on the outside, so much more grip on the 21 car, and he makes that move stick. Great stuff.
Yeah, easily done realistically, but then again, that's grip difference. You know, when you've got such a large step. Oh, never mind. I think there might have been a bit more than just grip issues there, and I think that one might be given back from Young, courtesy of an issue on his own side. Sebastian Starko trying to make a move. This one for 6th position. Kozlowski in that 6th position. Young is confirmed as another retirement from the race. I think that might have been a bit of a game crash on his.
Yeah, game crash. Disconnect, something like that. We saw Young just disappear. Thankfully it didn't happen when they were side by side, it happened when he was out in front, so no issues, but obviously gutting for Joe Young. He just made that move. He was in a good position, he'd had a good race as well. Obviously a bit of contact earlier on with Van Nieuwk, but generally speaking, a good racing. Speaking of good racing, we've got some more British touring car inspired battling going on here as we watch Sebastian Starko, the 2 cars behind him, getting side by side as they go past a back marker on the brakes into the chicane, nice and tidy, and he's going to have pressure all over the back of him is Kozlowski, who has still not pitted.
I think so. I think not. Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Getting very elbows out, I'll say that.
Yeah, but he's still got decent enough pace by the looks of it. I mean, holding on to 7th, having not pitted, is very impressive at this stage. So yeah, not sure, but you know, fair play. He's got a 12-second gap, or 15-second gap, I should say, to Kaluza in 8th. So clearly a lot of lappage going on. A lot of cars that have really been struggling further down the field, and obviously with being the kind of default liveries, it's kind of difficult sometimes to tell what's what. But there we go. There's the pit stop.
Yeah, Kozlowski into the pit lane, just bring it in. Fastest lap of the race has just been set from Ross Mcgregor. So that gap, let's say it was 10 seconds about 10 minutes ago. He's pulling out more than a second a minute, which is pretty impressive, it must be said. The Flying Scotsman right at the top of the field, running away with 9.5 minutes left to go in the race. Not too many more laps. I think it'll be about 7 from this point. And McGregor is well in control.
Yeah, it is phenomenal. I mean, it's metronomic pace, really is fantastic stuff. You can see him on the brakes there, hard on it, locking up a little bit, getting the car in, and using all of the road. You know, we've seen some of the drivers further down the field not quite utilising all the curbs, using, you know, a bit too much steering lock, but you can see there Ross all the way over to the left. Could have used a bit more curb under braking there, if I'm going to be critical. But he's turned it in, got the apex nicely, on the power, does use the curb on the exit. Yeah, just really, you know, putting on a show for us here. It's a shame that we didn't see the likes of Chris Butcher, because obviously we saw Chris Butcher qualifying on that front row. We expected him to be there, and those two would have had a great battle, I'm sure. But you know, it means that Ross he had a fairly easy go of it. Harada's done a good job to keep close. I mean, he's a long way ahead of 3rd, but Ross has just opened up the tanks the latter half of this race, and on he goes.
Yeah, I don't know how much experience Harada's got in this car, but like I say, Ross, even with 1, 2, 3 races, whatever it is, of course, Ross has a little bit more than that in these kind of cars. Any bit of experience is going to be an advantage. There's Kaluza out wide, Kozlowski straight down the inside, a little bit of a brush between the two. Kaluza's going to hang on to 7th position at the moment. Kozlowski's going to try and get to the outside with a big send, trying to send it around the outside of Goddard's, and might try the up and under. You can see there is absolutely nothing between the two as he slams the throttle down, lights at the front, and goes basically in a straight line.
Yeah, that badge was certainly touching the rear of the car in front of Kaluza. I mean, Kozlowski doesn't need to rush this. He's on new tyres. He's just been in the pit, so he's going to make the move. He just needs to bide his time and get through at some point cleanly. Mr. Dorkable and stack up the road in 5th and 6th, but the gaps are still there. So he's got a bit of work to do. If he gets past Kaluza quickly, maybe he can close in on that top 6 with 7 minutes to go. The new tyres will make a big difference, as you see Kaluza running wide through Old Hairpin. Kozlowski's got it all held together, using all the curb on the run up the hill towards McLean's. Let's see how he enters here. He's going to be nice and aggressive, in over the curb, on the brakes. A very tricky braking zone, this one, Lewis, as well. You've got to turn and line up your car as you hit the brakes, and just watch out for any snap oversteer. It's a tricky corner, is McLean's.
You've also got to wonder as well with some of these cars, they might have only taken 2 tyres on the pit stop. Now, I can describe to you that it's only that it's difficult. I can't really go into detail as to how difficult it is, because it's very hard to describe. It depends how much you've worn the rear tyres. But basically, when you change onto fresh front tyres and your rear tyres are worn or up to temperature, well, the first time out, you might actually find the car's a bit more understeery than you were expecting, because obviously when you were racing at the start of the race, or all the practice you've done, you've had fresh tyres all the way around, whereas now you've got some that's slightly worn. The fact that the rears are up to temperature means that they might actually grip to the road a little bit more, which means that your fronts have to fight a little more to overcome it for at least a few laps, and then suddenly it becomes into snap oversteer before you know it.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a phenomenon that we're all very familiar with. Those of us who've done longer touring car races, that is an amazing shot as they head through the final corner. Lovely to see it. We're back on board with Kaluza. I love this low down camera as well. You get such a great view. They use this a lot in the real British Touring Car Championship as well, as there we see is the move, and that is a great example of what we talked about earlier, Lewis. He had the gap at the inside, made it stick, no contact, made the corner. Fantastic.
Absolutely beautiful. A proper send. If ever you've seen one, just like say, beautifully down the inside with a send like that. I've always said no one when you're driving, no one likes to have a big never mind, no one likes to have a big dive bomb sent down the inside, but I'm always kind of said, if someone sends it down the inside, if they make the apex, I'll give it a clap. Well done. Yeah, if you're going to have a big send like that and hook it up, well, fair enough. As long as you don't use me as a brake, because if that happens, then we've got problems. But alas, on this occasion, not so much. A brilliant move from Kozlowski.
Yeah, and very late on the brakes from Kaluza into Old Hairpin. I thought that was going to go horribly wrong for a second, but Kozlowski managed to hold it all together. I don't know if that was a a bit of a comeback for the dive bomb we saw in turn 1. I wouldn't even call it a dive bomb, it was just a clean move. But more likely, I think that Kaluza just missed his braking point slightly and ran into the back of Kozlowski. Maybe Kozlowski was braking early. But it's all under control now. As we jump back now to Ross McGregor, he's got 22.5 second lead over Harada. He's coming up very soon to lap Jonathan. Actually, you know what? I think he has lapped Jonathan Fraser, because I saw a green car in the background. As we see back on this battle, Kozlowski running wide, Kaluza almost into the back of him, which would have sent him spinning on the exit. So these guys are not taking anything for granted. They're not leaving friendships on the table, are they? They're fairly going for it.
Well, they're certainly names that they will remember in future, it must be said. Kozlowski, though, needs to stop making mistakes. There's a little bit of a mistake, from my opinion, going down to the old hairpin. A little bit of a mistake there in the Melbourne Loop as well. Needs to reduce these mistakes, just pull out a little bit of a gap. I certainly think there is more speed in the car that we're riding on board with. Hooks the apex at Redgate quite nicely. We'll race down through Hollywood and the Craner curves to tick those ones off for yet another lap. Just 4.5 minutes left to go before we crown our champion of race of the season 4, which does look like it's going to very solidly at the moment go the way of Ross McGregor, a driver who is not akin to making mistakes by himself, but there are a lot of back markers out there that could cause him a few issues.
Yeah, he's going to have to be nice and cautious through the back markers. There's a mixed grid right now. We've got a lot of battles going on for position, but equally we've got a lot of cars in the mix that are laps down, maybe a lap ahead. It's very tricky to follow some of these midfield battles because of that. So yeah, McGregor's going to have to be careful, but he will be, Lewis. You know, he's, as we talked about, he's experienced. He knows what he's doing. He's very good at picking his way through. And with a gap as big as 26 seconds, I don't think we'll see him do anything rash. But you never know. Let's wait and see. As Kaluza now heads down towards the chicane. This battle has been fantastic, and it's raged on for quite a few laps now. It's good to see.
Yeah, you got to remember, like I say, when you got a 20, so when you look at your times, you see the next car behind is 27 seconds behind. You think, okay, I can actually back off these back markers a little bit, just kind of let them do their own thing. I've only got a couple more laps to deal with to race around right now, which is what we're going to see for this battle for 7th. Kozlowski and Kaluza very, very close. They've got a back marker directly behind, trying to keep them company, and might well see these two come into blows if we continue on with some of the racing going on. Just 3 minutes left to go. I don't know quite where Ross McGregor is on the racetrack right now, but he could be approaching the start of his penultimate lap here at Donington Park.
Yeah, looking at the gaps, I think he may well have lapped Oliver Bunns in 3rd. So lapping a fellow podium member, that is an impressive achievement. I don't think we've seen that in race of the season so far. We did see a lot of issues at Laguna Seca in terms of retirements, which might have meant something fairly similar. But yeah, it's just been absolutely phenomenal. You can see the gaps there, 99.8 seconds, 100 seconds to Bunns. He's still not a lap down, actually, Lewis. So, which is a bit surprising, because a lap around here is around about, well, 129 in qualifying is what we saw from Ross. But in race pace, obviously quite a bit slower on the worn tyres, maybe 133s, 32s. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be very close for that. But Harada doing a great job just to hold that gap as it is. And he's got a bigger gap over 3rd than Ross has over him as we see this battle continue. Kaluza looking to the inside.
Yeah, big send at Coppice. That's going to be a bit of contact as well. He was trying to struggle to get it to speed, to slow down rather, to scrub off some of that speed. And there was a little bit of contact there as Kaluza got to the inside of Kozlowski. Yellow flags out in Sector 3 that we're racing our way down towards now. And that was nearly the all-important switch. But at least for now, that is not the case.
Yeah, I definitely think what I was saying earlier is relevant now. I don't think the two of them are going to be best of mates after this one. Just lots of contact. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll talk to each other. And it's been a great battle. It really has. But yeah, lots of argy-bargy and lots of contact from both ways, it has to be said. But it's been good to watch. It's been thoroughly entertaining. There's now a 9/10 gap though. It's going to be interesting to see if Kaluza is going to be able to close that one down. But there's another mistake from Kozlowski, and Kaluza closes in yet again as they head now towards the start-finish line.
Yeah, thankfully we never really raced too much. We didn't really race each other too much, regardless. We've done a few touring car races where we've been on the same grid, we've just been on different parts of it. Unfortunately, you've been a little bit more ahead of me on most occasions. I'm not salty, I'm not bitter, don't worry. It has been a while, mind. But it's, like you say, sometimes when you race like this, you think, oh, actually that was a bit of fun. Whether you see it as entertainment or whether you see it as frustrating is all in your own mindset, as we can see here coming across the line to start the final lap of the race. It's Ross McGregor. He's got 50 seconds on the timer, which means this is the last one.
Yeah, absolutely. So he will continue on and I'm sure put away this final lap with no issues. But yeah, you're totally right. You know, if you go into this with a relaxed mindset, at the end of the day, race of the season is for fun. It's to put on a show, and obviously to try and take home a trophy, but there's not a championship at stake. So, you know, if these guys are both enjoying the battle they're having, and, you know, they're giving it a bit and taking a little bit, that's absolutely fine. You know, they can go away with it very happy with the day. And, you know, I've had some fantastic battles that have ended in tears, but I've still been delighted at how much fun we've actually had in the first place. So in a race like this, it might be absolutely fine. And let's hope that's the case for these two. I mean, we've definitely enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, like I say, you've got to come into it with a relaxed mindset in a race like this. You know what you're signing yourself up for. Everyone's here for a little bit of fun on a Sunday evening, and that is what I feel quite a lot of the grid have had as the timer has ticked down to 0. Ross Mcgregor's coming down into the Fogger ESs now. It does mean, though, we get another fantastic lap of Kozlowski and Kaluza battling over 7th, but over the victories that we've had so far when it comes to race of the season, when we went racing back at the very first one of these where Turkka Hakkinen took that victory at Daytona International, when we went racing for the second one at the Nordschleife, and the victory went to Thomas Vack, and then of course Daniel Branton putting his name onto the trophy in the previous race at Laguna Seca. Ross McGregor is going to come down towards the final corner now at Donington Park, and race of the season 4 is going to go to Scotland. Ross McGregor across the line in dominant fashion, 30 seconds clear of Harada. It's domination from McGregor, and he takes the top spot. Harada will come across the line about 30 seconds behind. He did in fact lap Buns by the end of it, so it's just waiting for Harada to cross the line as we head back to Kaluza. That car directly ahead being Kozlowski. It's going to be a tight fight.
Yeah, spot on from Ross McGregor, absolutely spot on. But this battle continues. We're going to have it till the checkered flag. I am sure of that. There's the back marker, Jose Lopez, who will, I'm sure, have the popcorn flowing at this stage, being 3 laps off the lead, but enjoying this great stuff, and might actually get involved in this battle, Lewis. I wouldn't really blame him at this stage, to be honest. You know, the battle's for 7th and 8th between Kozlowski and Kaluza, but let's see if Lopez is going to make a move. He's definitely looking to the inside, but very fair and respectful, backing out, just making sure not to get involved in this battle. It's not for his position. It looks like Kaluza's running out of time, though. It all depends on whether Kozlowski can get it stopped for the hairpin without a mistake. It looks like Lopez again a bit quicker.
Was it
not sure?
Is there maybe a fuel issue if the car comes into pit lane? And I think that might well be fuel for Kaluza, who's just pulled off. It might have chugged just a little bit, might have just got it a little bit too close on the fuel mileage, as Kozlowski has a bit of an issue coming down into the hairpin. But yes, there is drama late on. I think it might be a retirement for Kaluza on that final lap. I don't think he'll lose a spot, though, courtesy of how the lapping has worked. And here is your race winner, Ross McGregor. Super stuff. We're not biased, but you know, Traxion represent and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ross is one of the fantastic writers for Traxion, and I've known him for a number of years. So yeah, on a personal level, it's great to see him doing a good job. And to be honest, you know, it's impossible to see any bias in that, because you know, what could you possibly say he did wrong there, Lewis? You know, we didn't see anything. He might have made some mistakes, but knowing Ross, I doubt it. You know, he drove away from the start to finish, led the entire race, had the pace. He was on pole position, fastest in qualifying. It's just textbook, isn't it? Nothing wrong, and yeah, he takes a well-deserved victory.
Yeah, you had obviously a good drive as well from Yoshiki Harada, who took 2nd position after starting from 2nd because Chris Butcher wasn't here. Had a little bit of a race down into turn 1, but I feel for the pair of them, it might have been a bit of a calm race. Let's take a look at the finishes then for race of the season 4. Ross McGregor taking that victory, Harada and Buns onto the podium, meaning we continue the trend. No driver has been on the podium twice in race of the season. Jonathan Fraser, who was on the podium in race of the season 2, missing out with a 4th place finish. Mr. Adorkable in 5th. Then we have Stacko, Kozlowski and Van Uyck, who tried getting through the race with some very, very worn tires. Did have to pit a bit late on. Kaluza obviously with a retirement late in the race. You can see a few of the other drivers, Iftikhar having a bit of an issue late on, as well as Cavalazzi, who was sent off into the barrier as well. Unfortunate retirements from Melillo, from Cook, from Paparanopoulos, from Jan Smits, and from Joe Young, who did join in chat to kind of see how things were in the race. But I say that's race of the season 4 over and done with. And I think for some of the drivers who've been sat by the wayside, sat watching, I think they might think, actually, this race of the season stuff seems all right. This competition stuff seems all right. I want to get myself involved.
I was definitely enjoying commentating on it. I was definitely wanting to get myself involved in the racing as well. There was some great door banging, side-to-side racing. Obviously, the usual contact, we're always going to see that in touring car racing, but it was really, really good, you know, and I think it was a good advert for these cars on the game, because if you can find yourself in a lobby online racing against people, you know, similar speed, in similar machinery, and those touring cars specifically, you're always going to have a great battle, you know, and I'm sure many of those drivers will have a smile on their face right now.
Well, John, very quickly, I'm going to ask you one question, which, considering this one's a bit of a throwing under the bus, by the way, what kind of combination would you want to put together? We've, of course, I'll give you a little time to think whilst I go through them. BMW M4 GT3 at Daytona. We've obviously had the LMP3s at the Nordschleife. We've done Indy cars at Laguna Seca. And now we've done British touring cars here at Donington Park. What would you go for?
I know exactly what I want to see next. I want to see the new Caterham cars, which have been announced recently.
Ooh, yes.
I want to see them racing around Silverstone. I think that would be epic to watch. Silverstone, great for battling, great for overtaking, and the Caterham similar, you know, low power, lots of slipstreaming, lots of close action. I think that's going to be bumper to bumper, and I would love to see some of that myself.
Yeah, I would second that. Sounds like a lot of fun. Or yeah, take the Mini Coopers as well. Why not? It sounds like it's all going to be a lot of fun regardless. Either way, you can find out all of that by following us here on Traxion, as well as over on Twitter, Instagram, all the forms of social media. Same with rFactor 2 to see what is coming up on the platform. And if you fancy taking part yourselves, well, you could do so by getting rFactor 2 on Steam, jumping on to the brand new competition system that's been had more and more tweaks as each season has gone on. We're heading into season 5. As we say goodbye, we'll give you a little bit of a taster as to what's to come. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.